The champagne flute exploded against the marble wall of Beatrice Mendes's Manhattan apartment. Crystal shards catching the afternoon light like scattered stars. Her laptop screen still glowed with the headline that had triggered her rage. Bennett. Enterprises acquires green tech solutions, 400 jobs cut. Bastard, she whispered, her Brazilian accent thickening with fury as she stared at Jackson Bennett's photograph. Those ice blue eyes seemed to mock her from the screen, cold and calculating. As always, this was the third startup he'd destroyed this year, each acquisition followed by mass layoffs that left families shattered while his empire grew stronger. Beatrice pressed her palms against the cool window overlooking Central Park, watching. Joggers move like ants, far below. At 28, she'd built her reputation as Forbes magazine's most tenacious investigative reporter by exposing corporate corruption. But Jackson Bennett remained untouchable. 8 years without a single interview, 4 rejected requests from her editor. An illegal team that crushed journalists who dared write unflattering pieces about him. Her phone buzzed. Text from Thomas Maxwell, her editor-in-chief. Emergency meeting, 1 hour, bring your Bennett research. The Forbes building hummed with nervous energy. When Beatrice arrived, her white blouse still damp with hastily cleaned coffee stains. She'd been preparing for this moment for months, building a case against Bennett that even Maxwell couldn't ignore. The elevator seemed to crawl as she reviewed her notes, heart hammering against her ribs. The conference room fell silent when she entered. Maxwell's weathered face was grim, surrounded by senior editors whose expressions ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. Mendes, Maxwell said without preamble, you have 5 minutes to convince me why we should risk everything on a Bennett. Exposed, Beatrice connected her laptop to the projector, hands steadier than she felt. Jackson Bennett isn't just a ruthless CEO. He's systematically destroying innovation in the renewable energy sector. I have documentation proving he acquires companies not to improve them, but to eliminate competition for a secret project called Aurora. The room stirred. Maxwell leaned forward. What kind of project? Artificial intelligence integrated with renewable energy distribution? Something that could revolutionize the entire industry. I have sources inside Bennett Enterprises willing to talk. Former employees who can prove he's been suppressing green technology while publicly claiming to support environmental initiatives. Sources won't matter if he won't talk to you, pointed out Sarah Chen, the features editor. The man's a ghost. No interviews, no public appearances except mandatory shareholder meetings. Beatrice smiled, feeling the familiar thrill of a hunt. I already have a plan for that. 2 weeks later, she stood behind the bar at the Meridian Club's annual charity gala, her hands surprisingly steady as she polished champagne flutes. The exclusive Manhattan venue glittered with old money and new power. Crystal chandeliers, casting warm light over designer gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos. She'd spent 3 summers bartending through college. Muscle memory kicked in as she prepared cocktails with professional efficiency. The atmosphere shifted suddenly, conversations faltering as guests turned toward the entrance. Jackson Bennett had arrived, moving through the crowd with the predatory grace of a man who owned everything he surveyed. Beatrice's breath caught. Photographs didn't capture his presence, the way space seemed to bend around him as people instinctively stepped aside. He was taller than she'd expected, broad shoulders filling a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her annual rent. Dark hair, perfectly styled, sharp jawline, and those infamous blue eyes that seemed to catalog every detail around him. 3 assistants flanked him like bodyguards, their movements choreographed to anticipate his needs. Beatrice watched him navigate obligatory conversations with board members and investors, his body language screaming boredom. Every smile was calculated, every handshake timed to the second. This was a man who viewed social interaction as a necessary evil, endured, rather than enjoyed. When he finally approached the bar, she was ready. Bourbon, neat, he said, without looking at her, fingers flying over his phone screen. Beatrice selected the most expensive bottle from the top shelf, pouring with theatrical precision. What? She handed him the glass. She deliberately let her fingers brush his. The contact made him look up, those penetrating eyes focusing on her with laser intensity. You're not the regular bartender, he said. It's not a question, but a statement delivered. With the confidence of someone accustomed to being right, Temporary replacement, Beatrice replied, affecting a casual tone while her pulse raced. Maria caught the flu. Bennett nodded, already losing interest as he returned to his phone. She had seconds before he walked away. Must be exhausting, she said conversationally. What? He didn't look up. Being Jackson Bennett. Maintaining that fortress of solitude while the world burns around you. That got his attention. His head snapped up, blue eyes boring into hers, with an intensity that made her step back involuntarily. The air between them crackled with sudden tension. You know who I am. He pocketed his phone with deliberate slowness. Beatrice shrugged, feigning indifference even as her heart hammered. Everyone knows who you are. It's a billionaire who treats companies like chess pieces and employees like collateral damage. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. And that's your professional assessment as a bartender? The condescension in his voice was exactly what she'd expected. Beatrice leaned across the bar, closing the distance between them until she could see. Gold flecks in his blue eyes. Actually, that's my assessment as Beatrice Mendes. Forbes investigative reporter writing an expose on you and your Aurora project. Bennett's smile vanished instantly. His expression turned arctic, colder than a Chicago winter. You're trespassing. Technically, I was legitimately hired by the catering company, she said, adrenaline singing through her veins. I'm making excellent mojito, by the way. What do you want? His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. An interview? Exclusive access. Bennett laughed, a sound devoid of humor. No. I'll publish the story anyway. I have sources inside your company. Documentation about Aurora's real purpose? She watched his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. The public deserves to know how you're manipulating the renewable energy market. A muscle twitched in his temple. My legal team will destroy you in that magazine if you publish a single unsubstantiated claim. And give me the substantiated version. 1 hour, no restrictions. 15 minutes with my communications director present. 30 minutes, just us. But you can veto sensitive information before publication. Bennett studied her for a long moment, as if calculating variables in an impossibly complex equation. Another guest approached the bar, breaking the spell. Beatrice served them quickly, never taking her eyes off Bennett. Tomorrow, my office. 20 minutes, he said, finally. And if I discover you've recorded our conversation without permission, I'll make destroying your career my personal mission. Deal. He turned to leave, then stopped, looking back at her with something that might have been curiosity. Everything they say about me is true, you know? Beatrice couldn't resist. And what do they say? That I'm ruthless? That I have no heart. His smile was sharp as a blade. I pity any woman foolish enough to try changing me. Before she could respond, he melted back into the crowd, leaving her with the unsettling realization that despite securing the interview she'd fought so hard for, she felt like she'd just lost the opening round of a game whose rules she didn't understand. Bennett Enterprises occupied 40 floors of a gleaming Manhattan skyscraper that pierced the skyline like a steel and glass spear. Beatrice arrived 15 minutes early, her reflection multiplied endlessly in the lobby's mirrored surfaces. Everything about the space was designed to intimidate, from the 20-foot ceilings to the marble floors that clicked ominously under her heels. The receptionist, a blonde woman who looked like she'd stepped from a magazine cover, examined Beatrice's credentials with practiced disdain. 85th floor. Miss Park will meet you at the elevator. The elevator's ascent felt like traveling to another realm, each floor bringing her closer to the domain of a modern Midas. When the doors whispered open, Grace Park stood waiting with military precision. Her black suit was perfectly tailored. Her posture so straight, it made Beatrice instinctively check her own. Ms. Mendes, Grace said without extending her hand. You're early, unusual for journalists. Punctuality seemed important here, Beatrice replied smoothly. Grace's smile. It was arctic, among other things. Follow me. Mr. Bennett has allocated exactly 20 minutes for this interview. Not 21, not 22. Your phone stays with me. Beatrice reluctantly surrendered her device, clutching her notebook like a lifeline. I stopped before. Imposing double doors that looked like they guarded state secrets? One final warning, Grace said, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. Mr. Bennett rarely grants interviews, especially to reporters who employ manipulative tactics. Permitting this for his own reasons, not because your little performance worked. Before Beatrice could respond, Grace pushed open the doors to reveal Jackson Bennett's inner sanctum. The office defied her expectations completely. Instead of sterile corporate minimalism, she found herself in what felt like an elegant living space. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan, while built-in bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that showed signs of actual reading rather than decorative arrangement. Bennett stood silhouetted against the windows, hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed his empire. Even motionless, he radiated the contained energy of a caged predator. His charcoal suit fit with precision that spoke of handcrafted perfection. 11 o'clock, sir, Grace announced. Thank you, Grace.
Out.
He didn't turn around. Grace departed with one final warning glance, leaving them alone. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken challenge. Beatrice had interviewed presidents and criminals, but something about this man's stillness made her palms sweat. Finally he turned. Those blue eyes were even more unsettling in daylight, as if they could see through flesh to secrets she'd forgotten she was keeping. Ms. Mendes, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Coffee? The mundane question caught her off guard. Black, please. She watched in fascination as he moved to an elegant coffee station in the corner. Preparing to cups with the same precision he probably applied to hostile takeovers. No assistants, no subordinates, to perform menial tasks. Surprised? He asked, catching her expression. I assumed you'd have people for that. I find it levels the playing field. He handed her a mug, their fingers brushing again. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her system. Besides, I never trust anyone else to make my coffee correctly. He gestured toward a seating area, leather chairs arranged to suggest intimacy rather than interrogation. Beatrice settled across from him, pulling out her notebook with hands that trembled slightly. Your 20 minutes begins now, he said, glancing at a watch that probably cost more than her car. Project Aurora. She began without preamble. Can you confirm it's an AI-based system for renewable energy optimization? The slightest flicker of surprise crossed his features before his control reasserted itself. You have excellent sources. Is it true? Partially? He sipped his coffee with deliberate calm. Aurora is an integrated platform designed to revolutionize renewable energy, generation, storage, and distribution. Current systems waste approximately 30% of produced energy due to storage limitations and inefficient distribution networks. Aurora reduces that to under 5%. Beatrice scribbled frantically, her shorthand racing to keep pace. And you've kept this secret because the energy sector is infested with parasitic companies that would rather acquire and bury disruptive technology than compete with it. His eyes hardened to winter steel. Aurora represents over $1 billion in research and development. I won't see it destroyed by short-sighted greed. When do you plan to launch? 6 months. We're in final testing phases. She looked up from her notes, struck by a sudden realization. This could genuinely transform the renewable energy landscape. Why would someone with your reputation invest so heavily in something that could help address climate change? Bennett's expression tightened. And there it is. The character assassination portion of our interview. It's a legitimate question, is it? Or are you fishing for quotes to support your predetermined narrative about the heartless billionaire? Beatrice met his gaze steadily. If I had a predetermined narrative, Mr. Bennett, I wouldn't be sitting here asking questions. I'd be publishing. Whatever my sources told me without giving you a chance to respond. A beat of silence passed between them, pregnant with challenge and something that might have been respect. To answer your question, he said finally, leaning back in his chair. Aurora represents both humanitarian opportunity and business necessity. Climate change is simultaneously the greatest existential threat and the greatest market opportunity. Of our generation, the first company to solve renewable energy's efficiency problem stands to make trillions while actually accomplishing something meaningful. So it is about the money. It's about creating sustainable value, something your generation seems to struggle understanding. My generation? Beatrice raised an eyebrow. You're what, 6 years older than me? Chronologically, perhaps? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Experientially, we're worlds apart. And what experiences shaped the infamous Jackson Bennett? We're not here to discuss my personal life, aren't we? Forbes readers want to know the man behind the empire. Bennett set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. The man behind the empire is exactly who you see. I built Bennett Enterprises from nothing into a global company valued at over $40 billion. I employ 15,000 people. Worldwide, I've created more millionaires through stock options than any other CEO under 40. That's who I am. That's what you've done, Beatrice countered, not who you are. Something flashed in his eyes. Anger, perhaps, or interest. Disappeared too quickly to identify. 10 minutes remaining, he noted. She redirected. Your reputation for ruthlessness is well documented. I don't apologize for making difficult business decisions. When one acquires a company, I streamline operations. Sometimes that means eliminating redundant positions. You mean firing people? I mean ensuring the company remains competitive and sustainable. Sentimentality is a luxury businesses can't afford, even when it destroys lives. Bennett leaned forward, and suddenly the air between them crackled with intensity. Let me ask you something, Beatrice. When a surgeon removes a tumor, is she being ruthless when she cuts through healthy tissue? Is she being cruel, or is she doing what's necessary to save the patient? Are you comparing yourself to a surgeon? I'm pointing out that difficult decisions look different depending on perspective and timeline. The companies I acquire are failing or underperforming. I transform them, and yes, sometimes that process is painful for individuals in the short term. Like the 300 employees at Novatech who lost their jobs last month. He didn't even blink. Novatech was hemorrhaging money due to mismanagement. I saved 800 other jobs by making the hard choices their previous leadership couldn't. The conviction in his voice was unsettling. Either he genuinely believed what he was saying, or he was a sociopath of extraordinary skill. Time, he said, though Beatrice's watch showed 18 minutes. She closed her notebook, feeling like she'd touched something dangerous and indefinable. Thank you for your time, Ms. Mendes. He stood as she did, suddenly close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something subtle and expensive that made her think of winter forests. A word of advice. Be very careful how you frame this story. I have a long memory for those who cross me. Should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it felt like a warning, as if he were trying to protect her from something she didn't understand. Is that a threat, Mr. Bennett? It's a fact. He moved closer, near enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. But perhaps not the kind you think. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning she couldn't decipher. Then Grace Park materialized, as if summoned by telepathy, and the spell broke. Park will show you out, Bennett said, his professional mask sliding back into place. I look forward to reading your article. As the elevator descended, Beatrice realized her hands were shaking. She'd gotten her interview, gathered enough material for a compelling story. So why did she feel like she'd just stepped into a trap whose nature she couldn't begin to fathom? The story should have written itself. Beatrice sat in her apartment 3 days after the interview, cursor blinking mockingly on a blank document. She had quotes, research, insider information about Aurora, everything needed to craft the expos. That would cement her reputation. Yet every time she began typing, Jackson Bennett's voice echoed in her mind. Not the words he'd spoken, but the way he'd spoken them. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number rooftop of the Carlisle Hotel. Midnight. Come alone. A friend. Every journalist's instinct screamed danger. The Carlisle was an exclusive boutique hotel in Midtown, the kind of place where discretion was more valuable than diamonds. She should delete the text, pretend she'd never seen it. Instead, she found herself walking through the hotel's opulent lobby at 11:55 p.m. Elevator carrying her to the 23rd floor. The rooftop garden was empty except for a figure silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline. As she approached, the man turned, and she recognized David Chen, former VP of Operations at Bennett Enterprises. "Ms. Mendes," he said, voice tight with anxiety. "Thank you for coming. You're the source who contacted me about Aurora." She realized David nodded, glancing nervously at shadows. "I have information you need. About Jackson Bennett, about Aurora, about things that will change everything you think you know." He handed her a manila envelope thick with documents, financial records, internal memos, correspondence, the real story behind Aurora. Beatrice's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Even in dim rooftop lighting, the paper's contents made her gasp. This shows Aurora isn't just about renewable energy efficiency, it's about complete market domination. Jackson isn't trying to improve the renewable energy sector, David confirmed. He's positioning to control it entirely. Aurora's AI doesn't just optimize energy distribution. It learns patterns, predicts demand, and can manipulate market prices in real time. She flipped through page after page of damning evidence. "But why show me this? You worked for him for 7 years." David's face contorted with something between guilt and fear. "Because I helped build it. I wrote algorithms that make Aurora possible. Thought we were changing the world, making it better. I didn't realize until too late that Jackson was creating the most sophisticated market manipulation tool ever conceived. Why now I expose him? Because he's planning to launch Aurora in 3 months, not 6, like he told you. And because of what happened to Sarah Morrison. Name hit Beatrice like ice water. Whistleblower from Green Tech Solutions who died in that car accident last month. It wasn't an accident." David's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sarah discovered what Aurora really was. She's going to expose everything. 2 days before her supposed accident, she called me, terrified. Said Jackson had found out about her investigation." Beatrice's mind reeled. "Are you saying he had her killed?" "I'm saying Sarah Morrison was the most cautious driver I knew. She hadn't had so much as a parking ticket in 15 years. And her brakes just happened to fail on a mountain road the day before she was supposed to meet with a journalist. The implications crashed over her like a wave. If this is true, if Bennett is capable of murder, then you need to be very careful how you proceed," David interrupted. "Jackson Bennett isn't just ruthless, he's dangerous. And he's taken a personal interest in you." "What do you mean?" David pulled out his phone, showing her a photo that made her blood freeze. Surveillance footage of her leaving Bennett's office, time-stamped the day of their interview. But the angle suggested it had been taken from inside the building by Bennett's own security system. He's been having you watch since the charity gala. Your apartment, your office, even your morning jogs through Central Park. This isn't just about protecting business interests anymore. Beatrice stared at the photo, feeling violated and terrified in equal measure. Why would he do that? Because you're the first person in 8 years to challenge him to his face and walk away unscathed. Because you're brilliant, beautiful, and completely unimpressed by his power. And because Jackson Bennett has never met anyone he couldn't either buy, intimidate, or destroy. David's words hung in the air like smoke. "He's obsessed with you, Ms. Mendes, and that makes you the most dangerous woman in New York." She clutched. "The envelope tighter? Is evidence? It's enough to destroy him. More than enough. But publishing it will put a target on your back. Sarah Morrison thought she was safe too." A sound from the stairwell made them both freeze, footsteps moving. With military precision, David's face went white. "He found us. You need to go now." "What about you? I'll be fine. He still needs me to finish Aurora's final protocols. But you." He pressed a flash drive into her hand. "Everything's on there. Backups, source code, financial records. Enough to bring down his entire empire." The footsteps were getting closer. David pushed her toward the service elevator. "Whatever you do, don't go home tonight. Don't go anywhere he can predict." And Beatrice, ... He grabbed her arm as the elevator doors opened. "Don't trust anyone. Jackson Bennett has people everywhere." The elevator descended in terrifying silence, carrying her away from David and toward a truth she wasn't sure she was prepared to face. As the doors opened onto the lobby, her phone buzzed with another text, this one from a number she recognized. "Enjoyed your midnight meeting? We need to talk. My penthouse. 1 hour. Come alone, or don't come at all. This is bigger than you. Realized, JB. Beatrice stared at the message, her hand shaking. Jackson Bennett knew about the meeting, knew about David, probably knew about the evidence now burning like fire in her bag. The smart thing would be to run, to take David's advice and disappear until she could find a way to publish the story safely. Instead, she found herself walking toward the street, hailing a cab, giving the driver an address she'd memorized but never thought she'd visit. Because somewhere between her apartment and this moment, the story had stopped being about corporate corruption and started being about something much more personal. She was going to confront Jackson Bennett in his own territory, armed with evidence that could destroy him. And despite every rational thought screaming at her to run, she'd never felt more alive. The taxi pulled away from the Carlisle Hotel, carrying her toward a confrontation that would change everything. Behind her, if she had looked back through the hotel's windows, she might have seen David Chen placing a phone call, his expression not one of fear but of satisfaction as he reported that the meeting had gone exactly as planned. In his penthouse, 60 floors above the city, Jackson Bennett watched the taxi's progress on his private security monitors, a slight smile playing at his lips. Everything was proceeding exactly as he'd orchestrated. Jackson Bennett's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building that pierced the Manhattan skyline like a modern Tower of Babel. Beatrice stood in the private elevator, watching floor numbers climb with hypnotic precision, while her heart hammered against her ribs. The flash drive felt like molten metal in her jacket pocket, its contents capable of destroying the man she was about to confront. The elevator opened directly into his living space, revealing an environment that defied every assumption she'd held about him. Instead of sterile modern minimalism, she found herself in what looked like a scholar's retreat. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, filled with everything from first-edition classics to contemporary works on philosophy and quantum physics. A grand piano occupied one corner, its surface marked with the kind of wear that spoke of regular use. Original artwork adorned the walls, not the soulless corporate pieces she'd expected, but works that suggested genuine appreciation for beauty and complexity. Jackson stood silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking panorama of the city. He changed from his corporate armor into dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that humanized him in ways his suits never could. When he turned to face her, she saw something in his expression she hadn't expected. Exhaustion came, he said, his voice carrying notes of surprise and something that might have been relief. Did I have a choice? Beatrice. That's what makes life interesting. He moved to a bar cart in the corner, crystal decanters catching light from the city below. Drink. I'm not here for social hour. No, he agreed, pouring himself to fingers of what looked like 30-year-old scotch. You're here because David Chen is dead and you think I killed him. The casual admission hit her like a physical blow.
Did you?
Jackson took a slow sip of his drink, studying her with those penetrating blue eyes. What do you think? I think you're capable of anything if it serves your interests. Including murder? Beatrice's hand moved instinctively to her jacket pocket, feeling the outline of the flash drive. The evidence David gave me suggests you've crossed that line before. Sarah Morrison wasn't your first victim, was she? Something flickered across Jackson's features. Pain, perhaps, or regret. It vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. Sarah Morrison was a brilliant engineer who got too close to something she didn't understand, he said finally. Her death was tragic, but it wasn't murder. David said her brakes were sabotaged. David said many things. Not all of them were true. Jackson moved closer, near enough that she could smell his cologne, that subtle scent that reminded her of winter forests and dangerous promises. Tell me, Beatrice, did it ever occur to you to wonder why David chose you? Why he reached out to a Forbes reporter when he could have sold his information to any number of publications willing to pay 7 figures for it? The question caught her off guard. In her excitement over the exclusive, she hadn't questioned David's motives beyond professional rivalry and guilt. Because I was already investigating Aurora, she said, but uncertainty crept into her voice. Because I told him to contact you. The words hit her like ice water. What? Jackson's smile was sharp as a blade. David Chen has been working for me since the day he supposedly left Bennett Enterprises. His job was to feed false information to journalists and competitors trying to steal Aurora's secrets. His contact with you was orchestrated from the beginning. Beatrice's mind reeled, trying to process the implications. The documents he gave me, carefully crafted fiction, designed to paint me as a monster while hiding Aurora's true purpose. Jackson set down his glass and moved closer, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his blue eyes. Did you really think I'd let someone with David's level of access simply walk away from the company? That I'd trust him to keep quiet about a billion-dollar project out of professional courtesy? Then why? She whispered. Why orchestrate this elaborate deception? Because I needed to know if you could be trusted. Because Aurora is real and it is revolutionary, but not in the way David's fabricated documents suggest. Jackson's voice dropped to almost a whisper. And because from the moment you challenged me at that charity gala, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. The admission hung between them like a live wire. Beatrice's professional instincts screamed that this was just another manipulation, another layer in whatever game he was playing. But something in his eyes, a vulnerability she'd never seen before, made her pause. You're lying, she said, but the words lacked conviction. Am I? He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. You're the first person in 8 years to look at me and see something other than a balance sheet. The first person brave enough to call me on my reputation to my face. Do you have any idea how intoxicating that is for someone like me? Someone like you? Someone who spent the last decade building walls so high that I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone try to scale them. His thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You terrify me, Beatrice. Not because of your journalism or your investigation, but because you make me want things I convinced myself I didn't need. She should step back, should maintain professional distance, should remember that this man was potentially a murderer. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. What about Sarah Morrison? What about all the people you've destroyed? Sarah discovered that Aurora wasn't what she thought it was, but not because it was designed for market manipulation, because it was designed to give renewable energy away for free. Jackson's words came faster now, as if a dam had burst. Acquisition, every supposed ruthless business decision, has been building toward this moment. I've been buying up renewable energy patents, energy storage technologies, distribution networks, not to monopolize them, but to liberate them. Beatrice stared at him, struggling to process this revelation. That's impossible. The financial projections David showed me were fabricated to test your reaction, to see if you'd publish a story based on stolen documents without verifying their authenticity first. Jackson's smile was both proud and sad. You didn't. Even with evidence that painted me as a monster, you came here to confront me directly. That tells me everything I need to know about your integrity. But the people you fired, companies you've destroyed, strategic reallocation of resources toward Aurora's development. Every person laid off was offered positions in Aurora's research division, most accepted. Those who didn't received severance packages that amounted to early retirement. Jackson moved to his desk and pulled out a tablet, showing her employment records that contradicted everything she thought she knew. I'm not claiming sainthood, Beatrice. I've made hard choices, hurt people in service of a larger goal. Not the monster the media has painted me to be. She scrolled through the records, seeing names she recognized from her research. Former Novatech employees now working as renewable energy consultants, green tech solutions engineers leading Aurora's AI development team. People she'd assumed were casualties of corporate greed revealed as key players in what appeared to be the most ambitious humanitarian project in history. Why the secrecy? Why not just announce Aurora's true purpose? Because the energy companies I'm trying to disrupt have a combined market value of over $2 trillion. They've spent decades suppressing renewable energy innovation, buying up patents and burying them, destroying researchers who got too close to breakthrough technologies. Jackson's expression hardened. Sarah Morrison wasn't killed by me, Beatrice. She was killed by people who discovered she was working on Aurora and decided she was too dangerous to live. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. That's why you've been having me watched, not to intimidate me, but to protect me. The moment you published your first article about renewable energy corruption, you put yourself on their radar. The moment you started investigating Aurora, you became a target. Jackson moved back to her, his expression intense. I should have told you sooner, should have brought you into the project instead of playing games. But I needed to be sure you were who I thought you were. And now I'm asking you to help me change the world. To use your platform, your credibility, to help me expose the real villains in this story. Jackson cupped her face in his hands, his touch electric against her skin. But more than that, I'm asking you to trust me, to give us a chance to see what this thing between us could become. Beatrice felt herself drowning in the intensity of his gaze, in the promise and peril of what he was offering. Every rational thought told her this was still manipulation, albeit more sophisticated than she'd given him credit for. But the documents on the tablet, the vulnerability in his voice, the way her body responded to his nearness despite every warning her mind screamed, all pointed toward a truth she wasn't prepared to accept. How do I know this isn't just another layer of deception? She whispered. 'Cause, Jackson said, his thumb tracing her lower lip with devastating gentleness. I'm about to show you something that could destroy me if you choose to use it against me. He led her to a wall-mounted screen that flickered to life at his touch. What she saw made her gasp. Real-time displays of Aurora's testing facilities scattered across the globe. Solar farms in Morocco connected to advanced AI systems. Wind installations. In Denmark, feeding data to quantum processors. Experimental fusion reactors in Japan sharing information with facilities in Iceland. Aurora isn't one system, Jackson explained, his voice tight with barely contained passion. It's a global network designed to optimize renewable energy production and distribution across continents. When it goes live, it will provide free, clean energy to anyone who needs it. No more energy poverty, no more choosing between heating your home and feeding your family. The scope of what she was seeing staggered her. The investment required for something like this, $40 billion over 8 years. Every penny I've earned, every company I've acquired, every supposedly ruthless decision has been in service of this moment. Jackson's hand found hers, fingers intertwining with surprising naturalness. In 3 weeks, Aurora goes online. The energy companies that have held the world hostage for a century will wake up to find their monopoly broken overnight. And they suspect, which is why David Chen is dead, why Sarah Morrison died, why you've been followed by people who aren't on my payroll. Jackson's grip tightened on her hand. I can't keep you safe anymore through surveillance alone. They know you're close to the truth. As if summoned by his words, the lights in the penthouse suddenly cut out. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment. Later, bathing everything in red, Jackson's expression turned deadly serious. Stay behind me, he said, moving toward a wall panel that slid open to reveal an arsenal that would make a small army envious. Jackson, what? They're here? He pulled on a Kevlar vest with practiced efficiency, then handed her one. The same. People who killed Sarah? Who killed David? They've decided to eliminate both of us tonight. The sound of the private elevator engaging echoed through the penthouse. Jackson grabbed her hand, pulling her toward what looked like a bookshelf. It swung open to reveal a hidden stairwell. Emergency exit, he explained tersely. It leads to the parking garage. There's a car waiting. You planned for this? Been planning for this since the day I decided to take on a $2 trillion industry. Jackson paused at the top of the stairs, his blue eyes blazing with determination and something that looked remarkably like love. Beatrice, whatever happens. Next, whatever you decide about us, about Aurora, I need you to know something. What? Every word I've said tonight is true. I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me more than any corporate assassination squad ever could. Before she could respond, the sound of automatic weapons fire erupted from the main living area. Jackson pulled her into the stairwell, sealing the hidden door behind them just as bullets began chewing through the space. where they'd been standing. As they raced down the narrow stairs, Beatrice realized that everything had changed. She was no longer just a journalist chasing a story. She was a woman fleeing for her life with a man who claimed to love her, carrying secrets that could reshape the world. And despite the terror coursing through her veins, despite the rationale, voice in her head screaming that this was insane, she knew with crystal clarity that she was exactly where she belonged. The parking garage erupted in chaos as Jackson and Beatrice burst through the stairwell door. Muzzle flashes lit the concrete space like deadly fireworks, while bullets sparked off cars and support pillars. Jackson's security team, outnumbered 3-1, fought with the desperate efficiency of men who knew they were protecting something greater than themselves. The Aston Martin Jackson shouted over the gunfire, pointing to a silver car that seemed to glow under the harsh fluorescent lights. Bulletproof glass, run-flat tires. They sprinted through the battlefield, Jackson's body shielding hers as they zigzagged between concrete pillars. A bullet whined past her ear, close enough that she felt its heat. Jackson shoved her into the passenger seat and gunned the engine, tires screaming against concrete as they rocketed up the exit ramp. "Where are we going?" Beatrice gasped, adrenaline making her voice shake. "Somewhere they can't follow us." Jackson's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as he navigated Manhattan traffic at speeds that defied physics. Aurora's primary control center. It's the only place left that's completely secure. The city blurred past them in streaks of light and shadow. Behind them, black SUVs gave chase, their occupants leaning out windows with weapons that belonged in war zones rather than Manhattan streets. Jackson, Beatrice said, her hand finding his on the gear shift. "Whatever happens, I need you to know something too." He glanced at her, those blue eyes reflecting the city lights streaming past. "What?" "I believe you, about Aurora, about everything. And I think I'm falling in love with you too, which is possibly the worst timing in history." Despite the bullets flying behind them and the uncertain future ahead, Jackson smiled. A real smile, not the calculated expression she'd seen him wear in corporate settings, but something genuine and transformative that made her heart skip beats. "Terrible timing," he agreed, taking a corner so fast the car went up on 2 wheels. "But I'll take it." It reached the Aurora facility as dawn painted the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and pink. The building looked innocuous from the outside, just another glass and steel structure in a city full of them. But as they descended through multiple levels of security, Beatrice realized she was entering something that resembled a space mission. Control center more than a corporate office. Hundreds of technicians worked at stations monitoring feeds from around the globe. Massive screens displayed real-time data from renewable energy installations on every continent. The air hummed with the tension of people on the verge of changing history. "Status report," Jackson called to a woman with silver hair who approached them with tablet in hand. "All systems green across the board," she replied. "We lost contact with the New York facility an hour ago, but all other nodes are operational. We can initiate global launch whenever you give the word." Jackson turned to Beatrice, his expression serious. "This is it. The moment we've been building toward for 8 years. Once Aurora goes online, there's no going back. The world changes. Forever." Beatrice looked around at the faces surrounding them. Scientists, engineers, programmers, all united by a vision of a world powered by clean, free energy. People who had sacrificed careers, relationships, sometimes their safety, to be part of something revolutionary. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Tell the story," Jackson said simply. "Use your platform to explain what Aurora really is, before our enemies can spin it as corporate terrorism or market manipulation. Give people the truth so they can defend what we're trying to build." Beatrice nodded, pulling out her phone. Her hands shook slightly as she opened her voice recording app, but her voice was steady when she began to speak. "This is Beatrice Mendes, reporting live from Aurora Control. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I've seen the evidence, talked to the people involved, and witnessed the lengths that established power structures will go to suppress this information." She spoke for 20 minutes, laying out Aurora's true purpose, Jackson's real motivations, and the coordinated attacks by energy companies desperate to maintain their stranglehold on global power. When she finished, she looked up to find Jackson watching her with an expression of profound gratitude and love. Loaded to every platform simultaneously, she told her editor via text, "Full editorial backing, my reputation on the line. Ready for global activation," the silver-haired woman announced. Jackson moved to a control panel that looked like something from a science fiction film. His hand hovered over a series of switches that would change everything. "Together," he asked, extending his hand to Beatrice. She joined him at the control panel, their fingers intertwining over the activation sequence. Around them, the facility fell silent, except for the hum of machinery and the distant sound of their hearts beating in sync. "For Sarah Morrison," Jackson said quietly. "For David Chen. For everyone who believed in something better. For the future," Beatrice added. They pressed the switches together. Across the globe, Aurora's network came alive. Solar panels in the Sahara began feeding energy to European cities. Wind farms in Patagonia powered hospitals in Chile. Idle generators in Scotland sent electricity to factories in Ireland. Artificial intelligence that had taken 8 years to develop began optimizing distribution patterns in real time, reducing waste, eliminating inefficiencies, and making clean energy freely available to anyone who needed it. The screens around them lit up with confirmation signals from every continent. Power grids that had been controlled by fossil fuel companies for a century suddenly found themselves obsolete. Energy poverty, the curse that had kept billions in darkness, began to disappear as Aurora's network expanded its reach. "It's working," Jackson breathed, staring at the displays in wonder. "It's actually working." Beatrice's phone exploded with notifications as her story spread across social media faster than wildfire. Within minutes, Aurora's launch was trending globally, with people sharing videos of their electricity bills dropping to zero, of entire neighborhoods lighting up for the first time, of a world suddenly irrevocably changed. "There will be consequences," Jackson said, pulling her close as they watched history unfold on the screens around them. "The energy companies won't give up without a fight. There will be legal challenges, assassination attempts, probably wars. Then we'll face them together," Beatrice replied, standing on her toes to kiss him properly for the first time. Lips were warm and certain against hers, tasting like coffee and promises, and the kind of future she'd never dared to imagine. When they broke apart, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Beatrice Mendes. Brilliant, fearless, absolutely infuriating woman that you are." "I love you too, Jackson Bennett. Reformed corporate raider, secret humanitarian, and the man who just gave clean energy to the world." 6 months later, Beatrice stood in the same Manhattan penthouse where they'd first confessed their feelings. But now it was filled with wedding guests instead of gunfire. The global energy revolution was still unfolding, with Aurora's network expanding daily despite legal challenges and corporate sabotage attempts. Several oil executives were facing criminal charges for the attacks on Aurora personnel, while renewable energy had become the dominant power source on 3 continents. Forbes had given her a Pulitzer Prize for the Aurora story. Jackson had been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, but more importantly to both of them, it found something neither had been looking for when this all began. "Any regrets?" Asked, finding her on the balcony overlooking the city they'd both grown to love, Beatrice considered the question seriously. Her life had become infinitely more complicated and dangerous since that night at the charity gala. She'd been shot at by corporate assassins, threatened by energy company executives, and had spent the last 6 months looking over her shoulder. Her relationship with Jackson had been dissected by tabloids and business journals alike, with some calling her a sellout and others hailing her as the woman who helped save the world. "Just one," she said finally. "What?" She smiled, the expression lighting up her face like sunrise. "I regret not kissing you sooner." Jackson laughed, the sound carrying across the city lights spread out below them like fallen stars. "We have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time," as he kissed her again. With Manhattan glittering beneath them and a world powered by clean energy stretching out to the horizon, Beatrice realized that some stories don't end. They transform, becoming the first chapter of something even more extraordinary. The end like this video if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.